You know what separates the man who controls his destiny from the one who's controlled by it? It's not intelligence, it's not opportunity, it's the ability to look chaos dead in the eye and not flinch. Most people spend their entire lives as passengers in their own story. They react, they panic. They let every insult, every setback, every disappointment pull strings they didn't even know they had. And they wonder why they never get ahead. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. Emotion without discipline is just weakness wearing a different coat. The man who loses his temper loses the room. The woman who shows desperation loses the negotiation before it even starts. Power isn't about feeling nothing. That's psychopathy. Real power is feeling everything and choosing what gets through the gate. I've walked through rooms where one wrong word could end me, where showing fear meant showing my hand, and I learned something most people never do. The game isn't won by the smartest player. It's won by the one who keeps their head when everyone else is losing theirs. These 6 rules, they're not theory, they're survival. And if you're tired of being pushed around by your own emotions, by other people's games, by a world that rewards the ruthless, then perhaps it's time you learned them too. The first thing you need to understand is that silence is a weapon. Most people never learn to load. Everyone's so desperate to fill the air with words, to explain themselves, to justify, to react. They think talking is power. It's not. Silence makes people uncomfortable, and when people are uncomfortable, they reveal themselves. I've sat across from men who thought they had me cornered, and I've said nothing, just looked at them, watched them, and you know what happened? They started talking, started explaining, started showing me exactly where their weaknesses were. Every word you don't say is a card you keep in your hand. Every reaction you swallow is information you deny your enemy. Most people treat conversation like a reflex, something that just happens to them. But the man who controls the silence controls the room. When someone insults you and you don't react, you've just told them their opinion has no weight with you. When someone tries to provoke you and you simply stare through them, you've communicated something far more threatening than any comeback ever could. You've told them they're not worth your energy. And nothing unsettles people more than realizing they can't get a rise out of you. But silence alone isn't enough if you're still a slave to your own emotions internally. That's where the second principle comes in. You need to create distance between what you feel and what you do. Most people are like puppets on strings, jerked around by whatever emotion hits them hardest in the moment. Someone disrespects them, they lash out. Someone scares them, they run. Someone flatters them, they drop their guard. It's predictable. It's pathetic. And it's why they never rise above their circumstances. I'm not telling you to stop feeling things. That's impossible. And it's not even desirable. Fear keeps you sharp. Anger gives you fuel. Love gives you something worth protecting. But the moment any of those feelings makes your decisions for you, you've lost. You've handed control to whatever triggered that emotion. I've been afraid more times than I can count. But I've learned to use that fear rather than let it use me. When your heart's pounding and your mind's screaming at you to react, that's when you take a breath and ask yourself one simple question. What move serves me best right now? Not what feels good, not what your pride demands, what serves your interests. The man who can answer that question honestly in the heat of the moment is the man who wins. Now here's something most people get backwards. They think power means never showing weakness, never admitting fault, never backing down. That's not power. That's fragility, dressed up in armor. Real strength is knowing when to bend, so you don't break. I've apologized when I wasn't sorry. I've retreated when I could have fought. I've smiled at men I wanted to destroy. Not because I was weak, but because I understood something they didn't. Every interaction is a transaction, and sometimes the cost of your ego is higher than the benefit of being right. There's no honor in losing everything just to prove a point. The graveyards are full of men who refuse to compromise, who chose pride over pragmatism. They're remembered as brave, sure, but they're still dead. I'd rather be the man who's still standing, still building, still moving toward his goals. That requires you to develop what I call strategic flexibility. It means you hold your principles close, but your tactics loose. You know what you want, and you're willing to take whatever path gets you there. If that means swallowing an insult today so you can destroy someone properly tomorrow, you do it. If that means admitting you were wrong to preserve a valuable relationship, you do it. There's no weakness in adaptation. The only weakness is being so rigid that you shatter when the world pushes back. But here's where most people who learn these lessons go wrong. They become so controlled, so calculating, that they forget why they started playing the game in the first place. They optimize themselves into machines and wonder why nothing satisfies them anymore. This is the paradox you have to understand. You need to protect something soft at your center while presenting something hard to the world. For me, it's always been family. Everything I've done, every compromise I've made, every line I've crossed, It's been in service of protecting what matters to me. Without that core, without something you genuinely care about, all this power becomes meaningless. You become one of those empty people who has everything and feels nothing. I've met them. Men with fortunes who can't sleep. Women with influence who trust no one. They want everything and lost themselves in the process. So yes, build your walls. Yes, control your reactions. Yes, play the game better than anyone else. But never lose sight of what you're playing for. The moment this becomes about power for its own sake, you've already lost something more valuable than any victory could give you. And that brings us to something uncomfortable. You have to be willing to walk away from anything that doesn't serve you, even things you've invested years in. Most people stay in situations that are destroying them because of sunk cost. They've put in so much time, so much effort, so much of themselves that the idea of walking away feels like admitting failure. So they stay in bad relationships, they stay in dead-end jobs, they stay loyal to people who wouldn't cross the street for them. And they call it commitment. I call it cowardice. The ability to cut your losses is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. It requires you to be brutally honest about what's actually working, and what you're just pretending is working because you're afraid to start over. I've walked away from deals that could have made me rich because something didn't smell right. I've cut ties with people I cared about because they became liabilities. It hurt. Every time it hurt. Well, I'm still here, and most of them aren't. When you stay in something out of fear or obligation, rather than genuine value, you're not being loyal, you're being a prisoner. And the worst part is, you're the one holding the key. The final thing you need to internalize is this. Your reputation is everything, but not in the way most people think. Most people try to make everyone like them. They want to be seen as good, as fair, as reasonable. That's a losing strategy, because you can't be everything to everyone, and when you try, you end up being nothing to anyone. What you need instead is a reputation that precedes you, one that makes people think twice before they test you. I'm not talking about being a bully or being cruel for cruelty's sake. I'm talking about being someone whose word means something, and whose consequences are real. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. Every time, without exception. When you draw a line, you enforce it. When you make a promise, you keep it. And when someone crosses you, there's a cost. Not because you're emotional about it, not because you're trying to prove something, but because letting things slide teaches people they can take from you without consequence. Once that lesson is learned, you're finished. So you build a reputation brick by brick through consistent action. You become known as someone who can't be pushed, can't be fooled, can't be bought unless the price is one you set. And here's the beautiful thing about that kind of reputation. Eventually you don't have to do much of anything. The reputation does the work for you. People police themselves around you because they know the cost of not doing so. That's real power. Not making people fear you through violence or intimidation, but through the simple understanding that you are exactly who you say you are, and you will do exactly what you say you'll do. These rules aren't comfortable. They require you to sit with the discomfort, to go against every instinct that tells you to react, to defend yourself, to prove you're right. They require you to think 3 moves ahead when everyone else is stuck on the current move. They require you to treat life like the chess game it actually is, rather than the random chaos most people pretend it is. But here's what they give you in return. Control, real control. Not over other people. You can't ever fully control that. But control over yourself, over your reactions, over your path. And in a world that's constantly trying to knock you off balance, that control is the only real power you'll ever have.